Oracle, and today I'd like to talk to you about the innovations we've made in 2023 in Oracle eBusiness Suite. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about our overall release delivery plans and the themes that drove us to make the choices we did about how to invest in 2023. And I'll spend most of the time going through showing you a lot of individual capabilities that we've added. So let's talk about the overall release delivery plan first. The 12.2.13 release is now the current release of eBusiness Suite. That continues a 10-year pattern of delivering an annual update to eBusiness Suite 12.2. That update consists of cumulative bug fixes as well as new features, most of which are delivered in a sort of a passive way or a disabled way, so that you have to enable them to have them be used in your business. So basically, it's something that's pretty safe to apply on top of your existing code, even if you don't want to change anything, just to get the benefit of the bug fixes. But we encourage you to see what you can take advantage of in terms of new functionality. Now, alongside the updated eBusiness Suite version, we have a pattern of delivering every 6 months since late 2018, an update to our enterprise command centers. So we've now delivered the 11th version of enterprise command centers. And the key thing to understand there is that you don't need to update your eBusiness Suite to the latest level to use the latest enterprise command centers. You could take this enterprise command center update that we did, that we delivered in November, which I'm going to talk about quite a bit today, and you could use it back on 12.2.9 or 12.2.6 of eBusiness Suite. So you don't really have to do an update of eBusiness Suite to get to the same level where the enterprise command center functionality that you're using was released. We also in 2023 updated our Premier support commitment, as we have been doing every year, to go through at least 2034. So let's turn to the investment themes and basically how we organize our development and how we think about the priorities of what to do. So we always bracket our new capabilities into improvements to the user experience, new features and functions, and then operational characteristics like high availability and patching and being able to do lifecycle management operations, particularly on our cloud infrastructure. So let's talk about functionality first. So how do we figure out what features customers are asking for? So the main input we have into that is the ideas system that we have in My Oracle Support. But in addition to that, there are many times when customers log a service request, and then that gets converted, that issue gets recharacterized as an enhancement request, and then turns out there are other customers who have the same request. So sometimes there are many service requests that attach to that same enhancement request. So we look at those. And then, of course, we have many interactions with customers through user conferences and meetings with individual customers. So out of all of that, we take what we believe are the things that customers are really asking for, that lots of customers want, and try to put those into our product roadmap. So a little bit of drill down on the ideas system. At this point, we have tens of thousands of users. We have thousands of ideas contributed. This voting mechanism that we have in the My Oracle support communities is very effective in screening down the number of ideas that are supported by a large number of organizations. There's only about 1% now that get about over 20 organizations supporting the idea, and about another 3% if you count the organizations that support an idea with where over 10 organizations support the idea. So of those high priority ideas, we've delivered 36% of those so far. So actually a pretty good delivery against that set of ideas. And overall, we've delivered over 800 things that have been suggested in this set of support communities. So we're very much driven by what customers are asking for. This is an example of just some of the things that we delivered in 12.2.13. And I'll talk about several of these as we go through the session. So in terms of the enterprise command center idea, which is the main improvement we keep making in your user interface in eBusiness Suite, I think most of you probably have the idea of what this is, but just so everybody's current, the idea here is these enterprise command centers really replace the home pages of the applications and let end users use essentially a BI dashboard that has key indicators and charts and graphs and filter mechanisms to find their way to the data that's most important for them to work on given their role. And then they can navigate directly from this kind of these kind of reporting screens, if you will, or BI screens directly to the transactions that are appropriate to take the action that you need to take. So this is designed to make the users more productive and have them like the system better, make it more efficient for them, as well as to relieve the demand on the IT group to build a lot of operational reports so that people know what's happening that's important for them to work on. We have now, with this delivery, we now have 145 dashboards aggregated into 36 command centers. So basically in front of any application you're running, you're going to find an opportunity to use command centers. So I'd encourage you to do that if you haven't started with these already. So more specifically about what we've delivered with this release in this year, we've included both the April and the November deliveries here in this slide, and really highlighted the things that came in November. So I'm going to show you a new enterprise command center we have for the Internet Expenses application, as well as new dashboards that we have for GL and projects and Kanban. So I'll show a number of these as we go through the session. Now, the other aspect of UI that we've been investing in this year is really a rewrite of our mobile applications. We have 7 of these applications that we're going forward with. 4 of them are self-service type applications that will be deployed to a wide set of users in your organization, things like approvals for managers, then time card and HR self-service and expense management. And then we also have what we call line of business applications, where the mobile application really is the main application UI that a user is using for their job, whether that's a warehouse or distribution worker using our mobile supply chain apps, or a field service or maintenance technician using going out and doing a field call or maintaining equipment. So those are the ones that we're going for. We've had others, but these are the ones that have a significant amount of customer uptake, and so these are the ones we're going forward with. Now, in 2023, the technology we had used to build most of those applications was basically is obsolete. So that's the mobile application framework. So Oracle's basically stopped maintaining that. And we have rewritten our mobile approvals and time cards and self-service with a newer technology called Oracle Jet. That runs in a browser, so it still runs on your phone, but it will make you can launch it from an icon if you want to on your homepage on your phone, but you ultimately will run through in the browser with a persistent connection. We also rewrote the mobile supply chain apps and mobile field service and mobile maintenance apps to eliminate their dependency on the MAF applications. Mobile field service, mobile maintenance support disconnected operation, and they continue to after this rewrite. We didn't have to change the mobile expenses application because that was originally done as a native iOS and Android app, so that didn't have this mobile application framework dependency. So the net message is that customers should really transition to using these new rewritten versions for anything that you're doing. If you have them deployed, then you should update them with the new versions we have available. Certainly, if you're doing any customization, you shouldn't be doing any more customization, trying to leverage this mobile application framework. You should be doing it using whatever mobile framework you choose, and using our using our APIs to connect back to the EBS system. Okay, so let's start into the different functional areas and highlight some of the things that we've done. So the first thing I want to talk about is in the General Ledger area. We've updated the General Ledger Command Center to be able to break down balances by accounting segments and account hierarchy. So what this looks like is that you can take GL ending balances for both open and closed periods, and you can drill down to explore those using breakouts by any segment or segments in the accounting flex field, as well as in the GL account hierarchy, and compare balances across periods to see if things look right before you close the period in particular. Now, the other thing in the financials area that we've done in terms of command centers is to introduce a new command center for employee expenses. And this is really the command center that be associated with the Internet Expenses application. So in this case, you can understand spending patterns in your organization and make sure that you exercise the right management oversight over those expenses. So let's take a look at a demo of what that looks like. So you're at a certain level of the organization. Let's suppose you're managing a significant team with multiple levels of people underneath it. So you can look at your hierarchy and you can see in blue the total spend in the period you've selected for the whole organization, and the individual's spend for that particular person in that period. So let's a number of these we could explore. Let's start exploring the one on the right here for Casey Brown. So we click on Casey Brown and we go, but now the hierarchy is in context of Casey Brown, and then we can see her organization down below. But in this case, her own expenses make up a significant part of the overall organization's expenses. So let's click on Own Expense Analysis, and we get a dashboard of analysis of expenses now just for that one person's own personal expenses. And what you can see here is there's kind of a lot of fluctuation in terms of how much is being spent from one period to the next. There's a huge spike in August compared to other months, but you look back a year ago and at the beginning there's August of the prior year, and that was high also. But the rental car expense looks particularly out of line there. So or just on a proportional basis, based on the shape of the curve. So let's scroll down and filter all these expense transactions by car rentals. So when you filter by an expense item, now you can see the graph stays the same because we just filtered the table. So you can see the overall graph. So this is in context, but now we're down to 2 rental car expense items, where you can see that a year ago it was the same kind of conference that the person attended, and they spent $250 on the rental car, and this year at the same conference they spent $700 on the rental car. So maybe that's okay because the conference was longer this year or something like that, or maybe there's somebody did something renting too fancy a car. But in any case, this kind of drill down helps you just identify things that you might want to inquire into if things look out of line in your organization. So shifting gears, but still within the financial area generally, we have enhanced our property manager lease management capabilities from to cover equipment leases in terms of versioning of leases. So last time in 12.2.12, we introduced the idea that for property leases, you could maintain lease versions and simulate amortization schedules as you're revising the leases, then using approvals for new versions of leases through the AME process, the approval management engine, which operates the approvals and workflow. What we've done in this release is actually extend that from property leases to equipment leases. And this is important because almost every organization leases equipment. They are the lessee of equipment, and so the ability to do version management around amendments to leases that you have to track for equipment is now a new feature in 12.2.13. Now, in addition to lessee functionality, we also have lessor functionality. So this is what the Lease and Finance Command Center is. If you have our lease finance management product, that's for vendors who basically lease equipment to their customers. You picture big equipment, rather than selling it, you lease it, and so you basically have to track all the financial aspects of those leases as part of how you bill, because you're basically billing for lease payments rather than billing for a sale. So we built a new functionality into the Lease and Finance Management Command Center in this release to help accelerate cash application. And this use case is very similar to what we did in the previous release, the last time we released Enterprise Command Centers earlier in the year, where we added a bank statement reconciliation feature. We've basically taken that same idea and made it applicable to lease payments that you receive. So I'll show you what that looks like. So you are here, you're looking at your unapplied cash. You want to focus on the largest receipt bucket, basically the cash that's just come in. And so you click on that, you can start look at the cash application details here. And when you do that, you're now within the context of that particular set of receipts. But here is the largest receipt that doesn't have cash automatically applied. In other words, it didn't automatically match an amount of a particular invoice line. So you have to kind of match that automatically and make sure that the receipt is that you're applying that cash to the invoice lines that are the right ones. So let's just filter by this particular customer. So you click on the customer. And once you do that, there's really only one receipt for that customer. And here are we have 5 invoice lines for that customer. And you can kind of, so let's click on the receipt, and then you can observe that those bottom 3 invoice lines on the right side, just from eyeballing it, you might say those might add up to the 46,000. And so you click on those and you can see a little rolling sum at the bottom there. So it says the sum is 46,200. It does match the thing on the right. So you can see that cash is for the rent payments for this particular lease, and the other invoices we put out for service and maintenance are not the ones being paid for with this payment. So once you're happy with that, you can click on apply, and a transaction will be created for you that says we're reconciling that we're going to apply the cash we got to these particular invoice lines. Once you're sure that that's correct, you submit that, and then you just go through iterate on that through the rest of the cash receipts that you have. So very much more efficient interface than the way that you're able to do that in the standard product without this feature. Turning to the projects area, kind of the last ERP area we'll talk about, we've again leveraged that GL account analysis dashboard, but coming in from a projects perspective here. So let's take a look at that. So the example here is that we are looking at the revenue that we had planned to bill for in this period, and we see we're only actually ready to bill for less than that. And so if you look over on the right side chart, you can see that there's one project where there appears to be a gap. There's a budget where we expected to bill for some money in this period, and we don't have the project cost capture that would allow us to bill for that. So we'll try to figure out what's going on there. So let's click on that one project. And when we do, we drill in the context of that project, and we see there's the cost progress, there's the actual cost that we've got, and then there's the remaining budget. So if you filter on remaining budget for this project, what you see down in the summary in the cost budget is that for a particular task, which is the import, supply, and installation of the HVAC equipment, we had budgeted to be able to bill for 120,000, and we've so far only got 102,000 tracked in the costing system. And over on the far right at the bottom, you see, well, that's the $18,000 gap that we were looking for. So we've kind of found where that is. So let's go look in the accounting breakdown to see if we can figure out what happened there. So when you look at the accounting breakdown, you see that number, that budget number, 102,000, comes from adding these project accounting details together. And if you read across to the corresponding amounts in general ledger, you can see that they match for the top one, the labor cost, and the bottom one, the purchase invoice, but they don't match for this miscellaneous cost. So let's look at that account and see what that is. And when we drill into that and see the $18,000 difference, what you see down here in the transaction detail is that that the $7,000 here that has been costed and associated with that, you see that here. But let's perform this GL cost analysis to see what's going on. And you can see here that 72% of the cost came into general ledger through a manual journal entry, and only 28%, or the 7,000, came in through projects. So if you look down at the bottom, you can see the journal details. There's the projects entry for 7,000 that we expected. And then there is a manual entry, which is for the 18,000. And so at this point, you kind of have you found the problem. You need to now go research what happened with that manual entry. It's probably a cost that was entered into the system in a unallocated way to particular projects, some overall bill that was paid that wasn't allocated. You can see in the journal name, this is for July 23rd, customs broking charges. So there's some kind of customs handling, and maybe that was like an overall charge and needs to be allocated out to different projects. So you can, now that you've kind of gotten to the bottom of that, you can get that allocated correctly, and it basically presumably allocated to this project because this is the one that was short by the amount that you expected there, that 18,000. Okay, so but besides that capability in projects, we've actually over the course of the 12.2 release added a lot of capabilities relating to billing, related to project billing. So that's in several categories. It's like what to include in revenue and what to invoice customers for. So we've added just in this release some handling of provisional rates and entering hold reasons. We've added capabilities for invoicing across projects and around controls on agreements so that you can invoice, you can create, for example, a per invoice limit under an agreement. So those are capabilities that customers asked for that we've added in the projects area to support our overall theme of adding more billing enhancements. So switching gears now to procurement, the Oracle Business Network is really the successor to what you may have known as the Oracle Supplier Network that we had for a long time in eBusiness Suite. Oracle Business Network is now a procurement network run at Oracle that interacts with all of our product lines, including the ERP cloud products and PeopleSoft and eBusiness Suite. And so what this lets you do as a procuring organization is to have a single way to interact with all of your suppliers electronically. So basically this network maintains all the information about how to send documents and to and from the suppliers, so you don't have to go maintain all of that information in your individual instance. You basically can you can sort of inherit the information the supplier already provided when they signed up for Business Network. It just makes it easier for you to import new suppliers and maintain them. So this is not something you pay for. This is really something you could just access as somebody using eBusiness Suite. And if you're not using that, I would certainly encourage you to. You should really think of this as part of your EBS procurement system. What we've added in 2023 for this is some new functionality around partner matching. So the idea that you can upload a spreadsheet of your suppliers and we will tell you which of those are already registered with the network. We'll match your suppliers against ones that are known to the network. And if you say, yep, those match, I'm happy, then we will start maintaining your eBusiness Suite information about those suppliers from that network, so that if the supplier updates their address or something, you'll automatically get that update. And you can also invite partners who weren't part of the network to join, so you can have that efficiency benefit if they start participating. On the punch-out side, punch-outs are created when maybe one of your suppliers has a particularly complex purchasing process that's really local to their own website. For example, if you're configuring a mobile phone plan and there's lots of options and choices, each mobile phone provider would typically provide a shopping experience to let you configure the mobile phone service. And what you can do if those suppliers are participating in the supplier network, they can create punch outs that are unique to individual of their customers, meaning if you're one of those purchasing departments, you could get a specific punch out just for you, or also they could put out punch outs for certain groups of customers. And then if you're in one of those groups, then you get the punch out that way. They have a default one that sort of everybody gets unless they match in some other way. So we allow the suppliers to define all of those punch out registrations and who should get to which one of them. And then for the customers, you can search to find, as a buying organization, you can search to find which vendors have punch outs available, so that you can decide to include those in your catalog of available items. So let's switch to the supply chain area, and this is particularly interesting. I think a big advance, really, of something we can offer to you as of 12.2.13. So the idea here is that there's a very advanced method of inventory, just-in-time inventory replenishment called Kanban. And we're making that available to you as a regular customer of Oracle Inventory. So let me kind of go through first, just explaining, what it does and what it means, and then we'll talk a little bit. I'll actually show you, what this can do for you. So if you're thinking about, there's some simple ways that you might be managing replenishment of your inventory. And there's like one of the classics is like min-max planning, where you simply define a reorder point or minimum stock level. When you reach that, you're going to reorder up to a maximum level, and then you deplete again. And the signal to replenish is just that you hit a number, which is your minimum stock level. There's also what's called reorder point planning, which is essentially where you project a trajectory to get down to a minimum level that you call your safety stock. And when you get to that reorder point, you reorder. And in general, that should allow you to avoid getting below your safety stock, assuming everything kind of just behaves on straight lines and averages. Then that would work to replenish you right at the point when you get to your safety stock. The third idea is what we call electronic Kanban. And here the idea is that the system is going to determine when to ask a supplier or when to pull goods from or items from another location based on the actual consumption that's being experienced in the business. So this is a pull-based replenishment model, and it was developed by originally by Toyota, but it's really you start by thinking like the automotive assembly industry as a kind of classic use case of this. And it's a very efficient way to minimize inventory for items with fast lead times and with fast movement and short lead times, so things you're consuming over and over again in your operations. But they're expensive enough that you don't just want to stock a lot of it just to make sure you never run out. So these could be things like electronic components that are going into cars. You wouldn't want to have like a huge surplus of those because they're expensive. But you also don't want to ever have to, not be able to progress your production because you don't have enough and you ran out. So for that kind of use case, efficiently managing a pull-based replenishment operation, we can offer electronic Kanban. So just some definitions, just because there's a lot of language in this and it's easy to kind of get lost. It's really not that complicated. The terminology is that a Kanban card basically, it represents like a tag that's applied to like a bin of materials. So you have a container that holds, let's say, 100 gears, and there's a tag in that kind of says what that's supposed to be, and what that part is, and how many of them are in the bin and so forth. So there's some data attached to that, and the idea is that when that is empty, then there's a signal to get a new one to replenish that. And then you also model what's called a pull sequence, which is where an item, when you run out of an item in a particular point of use, where you're going to get the replenishment from. It could be a transfer from another storage location, or it could be to pull it from signal a supplier to deliver a replacement for what was in that that bin, essentially the Kanban card. So that's what the system, that's kind of the terminology for how the system works. Now when you're setting the system up, you plan how many of these bins or Kanban cards you're going to have based on the demand you're experiencing and how long it takes to get a new one. When you say I'm out, how long does it take to replenish that, and what kind of safety stock you want to maintain. So you determine those things based on your knowledge of your business. And then there's a formula, sort of standard arithmetic formula, that tells you how many Kanban cards you should have given the lead time and the safety stock. So a worked example here is on the right. If you were consuming 300 a day and it took you 1 day from the time you ordered till the time you got a replenishment from the supplier, and you always want to maintain 2 days of safety stock, and each bin is 100 of these items, you use 300 of them a day, the formula would tell you need 10 Kanban cards in that configuration. Okay, so so that just kind of gives you an idea of like what this is doing and kind of how it works. So before I actually show it to you, let me just kind of explain how this delivery fits into the kind of the history of Kanban and EBS. So way back 20 years ago, we had a sort of primitive manual Kanban card replenishment capability. So you could manually say, I want to replenish, and we could define a pull sequence, like who's the supplier I'm going to replenish from. that's been functionality in inventory, and we have a number of customers who are using that. We did something a little fancier with where we added Kanban planning, the ability to enter those parameters and have the system kind of configure how many Kanban cards you should have with the flow manufacturing license, many years ago. Now in 12.2, we added quite a lot. This whole lean manufacturing idea got a lot more popular, and we added a lot of capability in terms of things like being able to have a pull sequence where you pulled from two different suppliers based on rules, maybe 70% from one and 30% of the other, or something like that. So you have all sorts of concepts that we added during 12.2, but we added them in the context of Kanban being available to people who had the discrete manufacturing execution system license. So that's typically is kind of manufacturers who, you'd expect to have this kind of, lean manufacturing method. And we've had, a lot of interest from those. But what we've done in 12.2.13 is to really rewrite a lot of the user interface associated with this to create an enterprise command center based dashboard for handling exceptions and new HTML screens for doing the setups, like for defining and managing the plans and forecasts and so forth. So we kind of have a new delivery, and we've delivered it now as part of inventory. So you don't have to have flow manufacturing or discrete manufacturing execution anymore to use this functionality. You could just be a regular inventory user. So if you're in a business like a medical supply business where you're replenishing demands from like different nursing stations at different in a hospital or clinic or something, and as these expensive items are consumed in providing medical service, you get a signal to replenish things in a particular storeroom. You can use this technique for that, even though you're not manufacturing anything. So even just as a distributor or a supplier to, even if you're inside your own organization, if you're operating distribution facilities that supply, clinics or some other, endpoints of consumption. Another good example would be like automotive spare parts, where you have a network of repair centers and you don't want to stock huge amounts of every item, which could be expensive or bulky, in every repair store. But as things are consumed, you want the signal to be to replenish. And so lots of use cases of people who are not manufacturers who may be able to benefit from this. So let's go back and just show you what this looks like. So remember our example that we talked about. We're going to kind of start with that example. So in this example, we have a Kanban plan that's in place, that's working. So we have our item, which is particular gear. It's highlighted in blue. If you read across, we had average demand we'd set up to be 300, and the actual demand we're experiencing is 300. Got our 2 safety stock days, got our 10 Kanban cards. Everything's just the way we talked about it. And then down below, you have a plan that shows every day how many you're going to begin with, how much you expect to receive, what's going to be consumed, how many are available. You have your safety stock target that you're checking against. And this, so you have the kind of equilibrium day by day mapped out here. So then let's see what happens if one day you come in and look at this and you actually see that the demand is higher than what you'd planned. So now you're observing that the actual demand is up to 400. So your question is, well, is that something that just, happened that's going to go away? That's just one day's oddity, or is that a new pattern? So you can check up in the plan definition area, and you can take a look at the pick list here, see if there's a new forecast available. So in this case, yeah, there is actually a new forecast. So what's happening here is like the business actually got better, and the forecast is we're going to keep selling 400 a day now. So we really need to change this Kanban plan to reflect the fact that with our new business level, we're going to expect to ship 400 rather than 300. So what we can do is create that forecast plan. And when we run the program that sets that up, we will then look at this same detail that we had and see what the new plan looks like. So the actual demand's 400, that's what we saw before. Now we've created a new plan because of our forecast that has 400 being consumed as average demand. And you can see that the calculated Kanban cards over at the top right went up from 10 to 13. Because of course our formula, when you add one more 100 more a day, that's going to increase your safety stock you need. For 2 day safety stock is going to go from 600 to 800, and you need one more because of that lead time calculation. And so you need to go from 10 cards to 13 cards. And this is going to show you how that's going to work every day. So you review this plan, you say, yeah, this looks good. So then you click on where the finger is up there, you click on update production. And when you do that, you then see the actual list of Kanban cards, and you see the system has created 3 new ones for you, and they are available there to help you, meet the demand and equilibrate according to that new plan. So you see a combination here. There's some nice HTML screens that are used to understand what's going on and go through the planning process. Now let's check and see what happens when you're using the system and you encounter an exception. And here's where the ECC dashboard is going to come in. So you're in the inventory command center, you basically have the inventory control supervisor looking at how things are going with this production, and they can see that there's a red item because down here in the store's point of use, we're experiencing a longer lead time exception. So you click on that, and what you can see is you have a lot of data about what's going on with that situation, but you see there are 4 unmoved bins. And let's click on those 4 unmoved bins. And now what you can see is those 4 unmoved bins all come from one supplier called CDI Supplier up at the top right. And here are the 4 cards that are not moving, and they haven't moved for several days. So there's obviously something wrong with this particular supplier at this point. So what we want to do is look at the replenishment chain, which shows us what our alternates are for supplying that particular point of use. So that store's point of use here is shown, and going into that are 2 suppliers, CDI Supplier and BP Supplier. Okay, so what we can do is go back over to the Kanban cards and add some new Kanban cards temporarily that are going to be used by that BP supplier. So this is what it looks like to create a new temporary Kanban card. So we create 4 of these so that we can, while we wait for the CDI supplier to recover from whatever the problem is, we can have these other Kanban cards in place, and they will have the BP supplier pick up the slack until the CDI supplier resumes their normal behavior. So this one again shows how an interaction between the inventory command center kind of exception management functionality and the transactions where you do things like create new temporary Kanban cards, how all of that works. But together, this whole thing makes a very nice system, and I really look forward to seeing more customers who are outside of our manufacturing context take advantage of this to improve your just-in-time behavior of your inventory management and be able to spend less carrying cost on inventory. Okay, so in addition to the inventory replenishment that we talked about, there's another capability that I'm not going to demonstrate right now, but it's for those of you who operate the inventory transaction processing system, you're familiar with the fact that you run concurrent programs like inventory transaction managers that progress inventory transactions, and sometimes those encounter exceptions. For example, maybe you don't have a internal price list available when you're trying to ship an item across the country border, and this lets you help identify a situation like that, get it resolved, and then rerun the transaction manager, and then that transaction will progress. So let's talk about switch gears now and talk about order management. So in the order management command center, we have a rich set of functionality. What we've done in this latest release, the November release, is to help with some processing around back orders. So let's show you a way that if you are an order management operator and you encounter a backlog, that you can potentially resolve that backlog by taking a reservation for a material that you reserve for, an order you reserve for in the future, and solving a near-term backlog problem. So you are the customer service rep. You come in and you see for your customers that you have some back ordered items. So let's just click on back ordered. Now you see that these apply across 4 customers. One of your customers, let's say key customer, let's say is the 3rd one there. So you just click on that one. So now you're in the context of the back orders for that one customer. And you see there's one back order. If you read across there, the line quantity that's needed is 10. And the so what we want to do is find if there are, and the reserve quantity is 0. We're out of stock. We can't reserve this item. So what we want to do is find if there's any reserved orders for the same items that maybe aren't needed until farther out in the future, so that we can borrow from those and ship the one here that's back ordered. So you can find reserve orders for this item, and you can see that this is ordered in a reverse order by request date. So you can see that there's a reserve order like a month from now, which is for 20 of these items. And so we can borrow from that 10 of them, essentially undo the reservation for 10 out of that 20 and reserve and go ahead and reserve the 10 for the order that we need to ship that's back ordered for a key customer. So you just click on that particular reservation line and then click on transfer reservations from here, and you go to a screen where all this is set up for you. So you've got the transfer, because we know we're going to transfer it from that one we just picked to the one that was back ordered. You enter the quantity 10, and once you do that, you click apply. And when you do that, you now have 10 on that back ordered item. And now when you run pick release again, this will actually ship. Okay, so it just shows you how simple it is with this mechanism to resolve a back order problem in that way. Now, in addition to that capability, we've added some functionality that was highly requested by customers around managing blanket sales agreements. So we've had a lot of capability around blanket purchase order agreements, but this is blanket sales agreements. We've had some limitations in the past, like you basically you could have an agreement line, basically had to have a ship to address a single ship to address for the item. A lot of people said, no, we want the same item to potentially have multiple ship to addresses. You want to do simple things like be able to default a customer PO from the agreement into the individual order and so forth. So we've added a lot of customer driven enhancements in this area. Here's an area of functionality that is together is one of the most highly requested set of enhancements that we have in eBusiness Suite, which is handling of internal sales orders and in transit inter-org transfers. So here the idea is that if you think about all the features and capabilities you have with a regular sales order that you're selling to a customer, you'd really want almost all of that same functionality if you have an internal sales order where you're essentially selling something to another organization within your enterprise, across a country boundary, an organization boundary, or something like that, from one subsidiary to another. So we have been working in 12.2.11, 12, and 13 to build out all of these use cases that people want. So the ability to simply return an internal sales order, like the receiving organization got it and doesn't want it after all and just wants to return it, or there was something wrong with it and they just want to return it, and then have it be received into the organization that sent it and have all the accounting associated with the sale reversed. We did that in 12.2.11. Then we enhanced that in 12.2.12 to handle the in-transit case. If you're shipping with a long lead time, oftentimes people will use in-transit status, essentially transfer the ownership into in-transit status, so that it's in a well-defined state out of one organization, but not yet in the other organization. So if you're doing that with your internal sales order, we allowed you to return that in 12.2.12. Now, you also would want to cancel an internal sales order, like it hasn't gotten to me yet, I just want to cancel it. That's in 12.2.12. What we added in 12.2.13 is the ability to cancel an individual line. Like I had 5 lines on the order, I really still want 4 of them, but I don't want the 5th line. So let's just cancel just that line and reverse out the accounting that was associated with that one line. So you can do that now. And with 12.2.13, you can also cancel partially received lines. Like I I ordered 10, but I only received 7, and I just want to cancel out essentially the line for the other 3. So you can do that now in 12.2.13, and also you can cancel a whole order or individual lines for what we call internal org transfers, which are really, if you're moving goods, just moving them like from one distribution center to another, you don't have all of these shipment documents and shipment accounting associated with, like you would if you're transferring it between organizations, but essentially same automation to allow you just to essentially undo those transfers or cancel them is what we deliver here in 12.2.13. In the warehouse management area, we have taken functionality that is that's been available as a separate licensed product and really made it available as part of warehouse management. So here are the ideas: that you have a warehouse or a plant where you're making things, and outside of the actual building is a yard where trucks arrive, and there's a set of business processes associated with that. Trucks get checked in, they unseal their cargo, they get parking slot assignments, they get dock appointments when they're going to pull up to the building and unload into the building and then receive new things from the building. All of that functionality is essentially part of the extended process of managing your distribution facility or your plant. And so now we basically have incorporated all of that within the warehouse management license. There's no longer required to get a yard management license in order to do that capability. The next area I want to talk about is another really interesting one, and this relates mainly to process manufacturing. And here the idea is that many process manufacturing organizations have entire teams and teams and facilities that are devoted to lab measurement and testing. So many times people have had what they call laboratory information management systems that are dedicated systems to manage these. But what we found in talking to a lot of customers is that many of them don't really need all of the capabilities that those sort of third-party products have, and that there's a core set of capabilities that they really need, and we've added those now into Business Suite. So I'm hopeful that many customers who use process manufacturing can take advantage of the capabilities we have now to deal with sampling and testing and test results analysis. So the context here is that when you're dealing with process manufacturing, in many cases you're dealing with products that have an impact on human health or safety. So they tend to be have rigorous quality standards and are often highly regulated. So we're talking about pharmaceuticals, medicines. We're talking about food and beverages, chemicals that might be hazardous, metals that might be used in airplanes or engine parts or other things where the stakes of making sure that it's all like done with the right quality level are extremely high. So these industries have very rigorous sampling methodologies, as well as requirements for things like electronic signatures, where each person who does an activity signs electronically that they basically attest that the report that's being created about what they've experienced in the testing process is accurate, and they're like signing that report. That's important for audit purposes, because regulatory agencies will come and make sure that these things were in fact tested at the right points in time and tested frequently enough and so forth. And if there's ever a problem, you can go back through the history and understand whether there was a gap in testing. So one area in specifically, just to give you a sense of this, is there's a industry, there's like an ISO standard around something called acceptable quality limits. And this is a sampling methodology that's defined by an ISO standard. What this is it's like there are several different quality levels of attainment you could be trying to achieve. And oftentimes regulators will say the requirement in this particular industry for this particular material is that you get an AQL level of 1 or an AQL level of 2.5 or whatever it might be. And what the AQL level defines is, given your lot size, how many samples should you take and how many can fail before the whole lot has to be rejected. So again, these numbers are not made up by every individual company. This numbers come from like from a standard. So what we've done in EBS is basically automate the adherence to that standard. So we let you define the AQL level that you want for your sampling plan. And then that will define the number of samples that are needed and the threshold that you can't exceed in terms of failures before you have to fail the lot. And over on the test results analysis side, we have what we call guided disposition, which is essentially that we manage the testing, and if enough samples fail that the lot is disqualified, we stop testing and just disqualify the lot. In addition to that, in the middle here, you see a number of things we've added around some other aspects of the testing process, like each test has a test method that's required, and that test method may have a set of supplies that are needed, like a test kit, and then we can record the use of the test kit and the consumption, and that way you can both manage your inventory of test kits and also just validate that the right test kit was used as part of a test. We also have tester certification. You can capture the certification situation of the people who are assigned to do particular tests, because many cases there are people who have to have a specific certification to be competent to conduct the test. And there are also equipment calibration requirements. How often do I have to recalibrate measurement instruments to make sure that my test results are valid? So a lot of these things are very well defined. We basically let you capture all of that kind of information and right within EBS administer quality at this level of rigor. So I'm hopeful that those of you who either customized or have a third-party solution in this area may be able to take advantage of the standard features that we've built out. And those of you who haven't implemented all of this in your business, even if you're not required to, you might elect to implement some of this just because it is a very rigorous apparatus for improving quality. And hopefully you can take advantage of what we've done here. Now, ever popular, in addition to deep features like we just discussed, is things like adding APIs. So integration is a topic that never goes out of style. So we have new APIs for transaction data, interacting with individual transactions, and also for reference data, if you're trying to maintain things like item attribute updates and BOM and routing changes and things like that. So the things that are highlighted here are APIs we've added in this latest release. Again, these are very often high vote getters from customers. So the last major area I want to talk about is asset maintenance, and here we've made some really significant advance in the 12.2.13 release. So we have a new HTML UI which includes an interactive Gantt chart. So this allows you to replace a forms-based interface that we have with an HTML interface that is very interactive and lets you do planning for many work orders over the course of many days. So this is essentially a proactive planning user interface. And then sort of like with the Kanban, we have kind of a companion to that, which is how you manage exceptions. And here again, we use the command center. And this is a case where if something is wrong with one thing on one day, you could detect it here and go in and make an adjustment or fix it. So I'll give you a quick demonstration of what that looks like. We'll walk through what that looks like. So we're the maintenance planner, and you come in and see that you have some alerts on your maintenance work orders. And so let's look at the alerts. Here's a list of all of them. And I could work them down in the list, but actually what's new is that we have a timeline view. So if you can look and see what all of these are when their scheduled start time is and so forth, kind of see how your next few days lay out in terms of these work orders that may have different types of alerts. So the one we're going to focus on, though, is one that should have started by now but hasn't started. So its start date is in the past. And so let's drill in on that one and see what's going on there. And so we can first thing we want to do here is actually update that to try to start it down today. Let's say we're going to reschedule it. It didn't start, so let's try to reschedule today and make sure that we have a valid valid work order and employee assignment to it. So let's first off, let's change the work order to start on the 19th. That's today, the 19th. And then we're going to get to a work order assignment, and we can see that the default work order assignment we have, actually the person is overbooked. They've got there's 8 hours available. They've got 8 hours assigned. They've only got 4 available, so that's a problem. And so we should unassign it from that person and assign it to an available person. In fact, that's probably why the thing didn't start yesterday, because this person was overbooked. So now we'll assign it to somebody who does have capacity and time today to do it. And when we do that, we apply that, and then we go back to the timeline, and the problem is resolved. The work order is now scheduled to start today with an available assigned resource. So just a simple example of how you can use a nice timeline component to identify exceptions and quickly interact with the system to make some updates to resolve a simple problem. Okay, in the HCM area, I covered this very quickly because I mentioned that we did rewrite the mobile applications, in particular time cards and HR self-service. So this is what the new time cards they'll look like. This follows the same UI look and feel that we're using in our mobile applications on the Fusion side as well. So this is kind of a corporate look and feel that we're adopting here. And so this is what the time cards looks like. This is what the employee self-service looks like. And again, you can simply roll these out to replace the version that you have rolled out previously if you're using these. And there's, it's not that there's any real complexity with that. You just need to get to the new version. On approvals, similarly, which applies typically to managers, we have sort of the approvals app, what it looks like in the new rewrite. And then I'll finish up by talking about E-Business Suite on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And so every release, we are seeing a lot of customers move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. It's really a major transition, a really major wave. And so we are investing substantially release after release in continuing to improve the automation that you get around moving your system onto OCI, and even more importantly, once you get there, doing all the lifecycle management things that you would want to do with as much automation and reliability as possible. So we deliver this through these capabilities through a user interface called Cloud Manager. And so we've updated Cloud Manager during 2023 twice as of the time of the recording, and you should always check what's new. We do update Cloud Manager very frequently, so you should check what's new in the MOS document here. It's referred to at the bottom of the screen, just to make sure that if there are any releases that have come out since the time where this is recorded to the time that you're listening to it, there may be more to see. So anyway, I won't go through the details of the features here, but again, continuing to add automation in Cloud Manager. And then around Cloud Manager, just additional things we provision to help this OCI operation scenario, things like having the latest or a current demo install image out there, and making the Enterprise Command Center available, Enterprise Command Center's installation available on the OCI marketplace to make it very simple and easy for you to just spin up an ECC installation and just attach it to your EBS running installation. So just for closure, there are places you can go for more information. Our oracle.com/EBS is always that's our homepage, and where you can always get to the announcements that we have. We have 2 learning subscription channels, one that this session is part of, which is the Direct from Development series. And then also there's a set of transfer information training documents, really implementation level training and instructions on how to set up the features that we've talked about in more detail around how they operate. The place to always go because I can't cover everything in one of these sessions, to figure out everything that we did in 12.2.13 is the release content documents. These are organized by product area, and you can follow the links here to any particular area that you're interested in and work through the entire list of enhancements that we delivered in that area to determine if you could take advantage of new features or potentially remove customizations that you may have had. So with that, I'll thank you for listening, and hope you have a chance to take advantage of the innovations that we built in 2023 in eBusiness Suite. So thank you very much.